Welcome to the Olympian Editorial Board's Candidate Forum featuring the 3 candidates for Mayor of Olympia. We're very pleased today to welcome all 3 candidates for this very important position. On the far left is Dick Pust, a recently retired radio station manager. In the middle is Karen Rogers, a councilwoman. And on the end here is Stephen Buxbaum, Mayor Pro Tem, and another member of the Olympia City Council. And they are up for voter approval next Tuesday on August 19th. So we welcome you, 16th? I'm sorry, August 16th. We welcome you and we thank you for being here today. I'd like to introduce the members of the editorial board. Joining me, Mike Oakland, editorial page editor, are the 2 community representatives on the board, Pam Toll and Ruta Fan. George Lemisurier is the publisher, and joining us on the end is Jerry Wakefield, the managing editor of the Olympian. We're going to ask all 3 candidates the same questions, and these questions were submitted by readers of the Olympian. So we'll give them each an opportunity to respond. We've asked that they keep their comments to 2 minutes or less, and we'll get to as many questions as we can in this important forum. So we'll start with Dick, and I'm asking the first question. Dick, tell us why you're running for this position and what you feel qualifies you for the post.
For me, it's just a natural continuation of what I've been doing, Mike. All my life, I've served the community. I was in broadcasting for many, many years, as a lot of you know, and through that, I was always involved in the community, but not just in an official capacity. I served on the Citizens for Schools. I was on the Olympia Planning Commission, and just about any organization that there ever was, I was involved with in one way or another. So I feel like I really know the community. And when the opportunity came to run for mayor, I thought, that's a job I can do. That's a job I want to do. I'd love to represent the city in the capacity of mayor.
Thanks. Karen, why are you running, and what do you feel best qualifies you?
First, it's because I care about our community. There are people like Dick who were able to grow up here as children, and in some ways I envy them. And then there are those of us who had to come here as adults. We found our way. And what I found about Olympia was that this is a community that actually cares, and they put their money where their mouth is. They value children, they value public safety, they also value the environment and our general quality of life. And not only that, we've got one of the most beautiful settings that I've ever come across. So there's also what I can bring to it. I've been on the Olympia City Council. I've been very committed to public service, to listening, to representing you, and that's the key word, is being an elected representative. And one of the ways I've done that is by reaching out, by being in constant communication, by having forums every 2 to 3 months where you've gotten to talk, I've gotten to listen, and what I've done is created a safe environment for you. And then when you say something, I'm able to take it back to the council and say, this is what you said that you want. And it's hard to say no to you. I also go door to door, not just once every 4 years, but every single year, because you don't count just once every 4 years when someone needs your vote. And the only way I can stay in constant contact with you is by going to you, because I understand that so many cannot come to us. People are sometimes unemployed and they're looking for work, or they are raising children and working, or they're taking care of elderly parents and working, or sometimes they're just physically disabled. And it does get back to that representative. So the things that I'm focusing on are fiscal responsibility, government accountability to you as a taxpayer, because you've been very generously given so much of your money, and we need to take care of it. To me, that's open government, public records, and giving you the opportunity to weigh in as much as possible on how we spend your money before we spend it. And third, it's just being responsive. Why I'm running for mayor is because I do have some unique qualifications, and I also have unique passion and experience. It's not just about having any kind of experience, it's having about the right kind. And that's what I have. So I appreciate your vote, and thank you so much for watching.
Stephen.
Thanks, Mike. Like the other candidates, I care deeply about Olympia. This is a community that I truly love. It's been my community, my home of choice for over 35 years. Community development is my passion. It's been my vocation for over 30 years. The reason I'm running for mayor is it's really a natural extension of what I've been doing professionally. I can bring to the job of Mayor of Olympia my knowledge, skills, and experience in community development and working with cities and counties throughout the state of Washington. What this pursuit is about for me is bringing that experience home. It's a great honor and opportunity to actually do things for my own community, within my own community, that I have been doing across the state and nation for a number of years. In terms of the work itself, the last 18 months on the council, I think, are an example of what you folks can look forward to in my leadership in the future. This work has been about accomplishing things, getting things done. One of the first things I did on council was reduce height limits on the isthmus. I moved on rapidly with the things that I had promised to do in my campaign. I addressed homelessness by meeting with over 35 religious leaders in our region and social service providers, listening to them carefully, and then putting together a homelessness prevention plan that I think is a model for our region. I worked with neighborhood leaders on improving code enforcement. I made sure that our community development block grant program was concentrated and focused in a way that would add resources to the city's budget without increasing debt in the city's budget. By creating a $2 million local development loan fund, I hope that we can move forward with community revitalization in downtown Olympia. These are examples of what you can expect from me and my leadership as mayor of Olympia.
Thank you. Ruta, your question for Karen?
Yes, this one was one I think that was on the minds of people not too long ago, and it's where do you stand on the issue of a fireworks ban like the one that's in Lacey right now? Should a ban be imposed in the city of Olympia?
I don't really consider this an imposition. What we're doing is putting it before the voters. And when there's any doubt that the voters should have the final say, and that's what we're giving them. It's a very strong issue that people feel very passionately about on either side, so let them decide. Myself personally, I'll admit I'm going to vote for it. One of the things I mentioned, whether I should have or not, is that I have a cat. And she was absolutely terrified. As I've been going door to door, I saw a picture of the most beautiful Siamese, and it was posted, lost on the 4th of July. We've had people who've had their homes burned. 2 years ago when I was campaigning, I knocked on this one door. It was slightly off of Boulevard. And it was just about a week after 4th of July, I saw this huge tarp over her roof and a sign posted right outside of her garage saying, beware, enter at your own risk. Well, what happened was this lady was having a bath. And she lives at the end of a cul-de-sac. Some kids were shooting off little, what do you call that? Rocket launchers? Bottle rockets. It landed on her roof. It caught fire. The kids ran home because they were afraid of getting into trouble. In the meantime, the lady had her door closed. She and her cat are in the house while it's catching fire. Eventually, she found out about it. She was able to get out safely. But these are the types of considerations we really do have to keep in mind. And I think it's appropriate to let it go to the voters.
Stephen?
I am grateful that last night at council, and I should say as a reference point, today's August 10th, so yesterday's August 9th council meeting, we unanimously agreed to place the subject of a fireworks ban on the November ballot. I think that's an appropriate move. I appreciate the leadership of Mayor Ma and Councilmember Rowe in bringing this forward. I think I agree with many of Karen's remarks. I think that this is a matter of getting a clear understanding of the choice of the people, the citizens of Olympia. It brings us in alignment with Lacey and their ballot measure that happened in 2007. So I think we're moving forward in an appropriate way.
And Dick?
Well, I was not on the council last night, but I was at the council meeting, and I was sitting in the audience with a number of community leaders who use fireworks as fireworks stands about 4 days out of every year to make a lot of money for their organizations. So there are churches, youth groups, schools that rely on the money that they make by selling fireworks, and they said it's not that easy to switch to some other form of making money for their groups. So these folks are going to probably lose a lot of revenue if there is a ban on fireworks. That said, I can't say that I particularly enjoyed the noise on the 4th of July night myself, so I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on that issue, but I think the people will probably vote to ban it, but folks will go to the tribal fire stands and fireworks stands and bring the fireworks home and blow them off anyway, and I see nothing wrong with local organizations making the money there.
Okay. George, your question for Steve?
Okay, well, I'm sure the candidates have anticipated this question from Olympian readers. We understand that the future of Capitol Lake will ultimately be a state decision, but the city of Olympia will have some influence on the outcome. So, as mayor, would you favor retaining Capitol Lake as a reflecting pool or converting it to an estuary?
Thanks, George. I'm glad you prefaced the question the way you did, because I think it's very important for us all to understand that the lake and Heritage Park are owned by the state of Washington. So they have responsibility to manage the lake. From my perspective, the city of Olympia, the council, and the mayor have the responsibility of protecting the interests of the city, no matter which direction it goes, either lake or estuary. We have a serious problem. The lake is unhealthy. We have an infestation of the New Zealand mud snail. No matter which way we go in terms of lake or estuary, the lake needs to be dredged. During the last legislature, some important steps were taken, not quickly enough in my mind, but some important steps were taken in putting aside enough money to apply for permits for dredging, which is a first step that needs to be taken no matter which direction we go. That dredging entails a 3-year permitting process. I am concerned about simply removing the dam without clear thinking about downstream and South Sound impacts. I'm concerned about leaving the dam in place without a clear management plan, not only for the lake and estuary, but for the entire watershed. My own preference is to work towards a master plan for this area that includes a very aesthetically pleasing water feature that does justice to the investments that we've made in Heritage Park, while at the same time coming up with a watershed management plan that will encompass all the way from the headwaters of the Deschutes River all the way down to the South Sound. We need that kind of a comprehensive plan. And one of my suggestions to our delegation was pursuing legislation that might be similar to what is used in a lake district, where we have a special taxing district that can provide supplemental revenue to what the state might be able to provide over the long term. So this is owned by the state. We have a long ways to go. We can influence this, but we need to address the environmental concerns as soon as possible.
Dick?
So do what it takes to keep it a lake. I've studied both sides of the issue. No matter what you do, it's going to cost money. So let's pick a direction. My direction is keep it a lake. I learned to swim there. I love that lake. It's beautiful. I want it there. It's part of our beautiful city. Let's keep it a lake.
I agree with him in that it's a community jewel. I've got a master's degree in wetland ecology, and what I can tell you as a scientist is that once you've built around a resource like this, it's so difficult to get it back. What are we going to do with downtown business if we restore it into an estuary? And also, how successful is it going to be if we even try to restore it? This is an urban environment. And when I think about the Puget Sound as a whole, and I am an environmentalist, and how much money this will cost to restore and then maintain from that point forward, are we going to get our bang for our buck? I would love to see the Puget Sound as a whole restored, and I can understand where the legislature is coming from. Also, State Representative Sam Hunt, he introduced a bill to keep it a lake. I think he's very much in touch with our community, and I appreciate the fact that he went out there and he just stated it, just like Dick Pust has and just like I have. This is something I will fully get behind Sam Hunt on personally, and as far as representing the people of Olympia, I will respect their wishes, and I think it's extremely clear that they are very much for the lake.
Jerry, your question for Dick?
Yes, the future of downtown is always of concern to the council and to local residents. Specifically, what initiatives do you propose to make downtown Olympia feel safer to visitors, people who live there, and people who do business there?
I attended a very interesting forum downtown a few weeks ago. George Missouri, I know you were there also, called Vision 2020, and some tremendous ideas were presented during that I couldn't summarize it all in this one short telecast here, but there are some great ideas out there. There are ways to improve downtown to make it more acceptable to more people. A lot of people like downtown exactly the way it is, but there are a lot of people who just drive through downtown. More people than I like have said that they won't go downtown for any reason. They're afraid, they're fearful, they just have to drive through it to get from one side to the other. We need to get those people to want to go downtown, and there are ways to do it, and let's do it. I think learning more about the Vision 2020 is a first step.
Karen.
Well, to answer your question, there are a whole bunch of ideas, a lot of things that we can do, one of which is to continue the downtown patrol. That's something I heard so much of when I was going door to door 2 years ago, and not just from the people of Olympia, but also from the downtown business communities. They miss not just the street patrol, they miss the interaction, the relationship where they feel comfortable just calling someone up or knowing that someone's going to swing around throughout the day and just say, how is it going? This is something that we absolutely must continue, and I was instrumental in getting this put back. As a matter of fact, it started with me, and then I told Janine Rowe, Janine, have you gone downtown at 9 o'clock at night? She didn't. She went, and she came back with saying, quote, oh my God. And then we told Renda, and then Renda went out, and she had the same reaction. The three of us were on the land use committee, and then from that point forward, we went to the full council, and we got this funding. Another thing we can do is housing. But I do agree, first we need to bring business, and from that point forward we can bring in housing. The more people downtown, the more they're going to own the safety of their community. Lighting the alleyways, we already have a project where we're starting that. This is important. People simply feel safer when it's a lit area. Addressing our drug problems. We have heroin problems, we have meth problems. We know this. It has to be addressed. Another thing is alcohol impact areas. This is something we're already looking into. We're collecting the data, and from that point forward, we can make an ordinance. It has to be in place for 6 months. We can see how it goes, and then we can go to the Liquor Control Board and make this permanent. But this is keeping high alcohol content, cheap beer or wine off the streets, and we absolutely need to do that. Another thing is working with our downtown clubs. A lot of people might complain about, oh, there are people hanging out by the sidewalks and they're homeless. I disagree with that. What I've seen, because I live half a mile downtown and I walk downtown very, very frequently along 4th, and what I see are problems with the clubs, that they have their customers that are spilling out onto the sidewalks. Something that we could do is open up the north-south alleyways for them to use. If they want to have an outdoor seating area or they want their customers to have a place to smoke, that's great. Let's put them in the north-south alleyways and keep them on the sidewalk where other people can use those same shared spaces. And these are just some of the ideas. I'm sure the community is going to come up with a lot more.
And Stephen.
Olympia has an incredible natural setting. We have such an advantage over so many state capitals as well as communities around the country. We need to take the natural setting, the beauty of our environment, and turn that into the asset that it really is. When you make a place beautiful and interesting, people want to be there. And one of the things that I've been enjoying calling attention to that's coming up soon is on August 25th at 5:30 p.m., we're going to open Percival Landing Phase 1. When the public sees how beautiful our waterfront can be with some appropriate amenities and what open access to the waterfront can do for our downtown environment, I think they're going to just start envisioning an extraordinary renaissance and change for our downtown community. In my own experience, working with the city of Wenatchee, Tacoma, Vancouver, both in working on waterfront areas, bringing housing, affordable housing into downtown communities, those same approaches are what I'm interested in bringing to the city of Olympia. Since being on the council, I've been working with other council members to sell these ideas, many of which I've heard mentioned. I started meeting monthly with downtown businesses on figuring out what things were most important to them. The outcome of the homelessness prevention plan was in part making sure that there were appropriate partnerships being forged between businesses, social service providers, and our law enforcement. The creation of the $2 million low-interest loan program. I'm hoping to put that to work for our downtown businesses in conjunction with something that I've been championing, calling the community renewal area. Community renewal area legislation is an extension of what was available starting in the 50s of urban renewal. How that's applied in Washington State is a city that passes a community renewal area can gain additional municipal powers that give us the ability to work effectively with the private sector in appropriate development and placement of appropriate development to really enrich our downtown. These are things that I've been working on actively really throughout my whole career in revitalizing downtowns, starting in the 80s. I'm looking forward to bringing that experience home to the city of Olympia. We've gotten many important programs started. I'm looking forward to making more happen in 2012 and beyond.
Thank you. Pam, you have a question for Karen to start.
I have a three-part question for you.
Okay, let me take notes.
I think I'll put my glasses on, actually. It's about parking. Are you satisfied with the new parking pay stations? Should the city change its parking policies? And finally, do you support or oppose a municipal parking garage in downtown Olympia?
Okay.
Pay stations, parking policy, and municipal parking garage.
Okay, so the pay stations, you know, I love how Janine just puts it out there. She says, I hate them. Well, I agree with her. I don't like them either, and I hear from so many people throughout our community that don't like them either. I can't tell you how many business owners have contacted me, either in person, on the phone, through email, sending letters just saying, this is killing us. This is driving away our customers. The most recent one was a lady who owns Hot Toddy. Her name is Sydney Hahn. She owns 3 businesses downtown, and all of them are suffering. As a matter of fact, I've actually asked her to write something and submit it to you. Hopefully you'll publish it. I'd like you if you would. Anyway, but in the meantime, I don't think we can return these parking pay stations back to the manufacturer, but what I would love to do is just move them to closer to Capitol Campus. It's a sophisticated setting. We have lobbyists who travel all over the state. They know how to use them. That's where we have 9-hour parking. For $1 an hour, I could understand if it's Seattle that might charge $3 or $4 an hour, or Portland, because you're not going to carry that much change with you, but I certainly carry well over $2 in change to feed a regular meter. To me, that's appropriate. As far as our parking policies, I'll be honest with you, one of the things I would like to do is show a little grace. I've heard so many people say, I got back to my car just 1 or 2 minutes late and I got a ticket. At this point, I'm going to the mall. Because at the mall, maybe you might pay more, maybe you might not, but you know you're not going to get a ticket. What we could do is, rather than spending over $800,000 on parking pay stations, we could also spend a little bit of money with signage. People oftentimes, they just don't know where to park, and I've heard these comments. Is this a private lot or is this a public lot? When can I park there? When can I? Where can I find the 3-hour, the 4-hour, or the 9-hour? We just are not informing them, and that's part of the struggle. You go into a major metropolis, you'll always find those signs. It's very easy to find parking in Seattle and down in Portland. And your third part.
Municipal parking garage?
Municipal parking garage. There was a study done. I've heard a lot of people say that they want this garage, but we recently had a study done, actually it was a few years ago, and we found out that we just don't have the market yet. One day we probably will, and then there's going to be the question of where to locate it. But right now it would be so expensive for us to purchase the land and to clean it up and to build, maintain, operate. And then there are the security risks. So they would have to be manned probably 24/7. Once there is the demand for it, yes, I think we should look into it. But right now, based on a study that was done, the demand isn't there. And I'm going to respect that study and focus the monies on where we know they're truly most needed. And in the meantime, let's just inform the people where the parking's at. Stephen?
So I'm not satisfied with the pay stations. This is something that the current council inherited from last council. I think we can learn from this. We need to learn from it and move on. The pay stations, unfortunately, I don't think were appropriately tested really before being placed. What we're focusing on now is trying to make the best of them that we can. I think it was an extraordinary challenge when in early 2010 we were faced with an option of either turning them on or not turning them on. If we hadn't turned them on, we would have immediately had an $810,000 hole in our budget, so which wouldn't have worked, of course. At this point, I think what's most important is try to make them as user-friendly as we can. We need to continue to work with businesses. One of the things that I started doing, as I mentioned earlier in a different question, was monthly I started meeting with the Parking and Business Improvement Area Board. The members of that board are elected by downtown businesses. They're the elected representation of downtown businesses in Olympia. I was working very carefully with them and trying to find the best kind of parking business plan that we could put together based on data, based on information, to accommodate both downtown employees and accommodate shoppers. Parking really needs to work for both. It's very important to me to make sure that businesses are fully supported. Commerce in downtown, we need to make sure that there are no barriers to further commercial development. Olympia, it doesn't work for me to compare downtown Olympia to a mall. Malls don't have waterfront like downtown Olympia does. There's a lot of different reasons to go downtown, which are both shopping and recreational. In terms of changing our policy, I want to make sure that our policy is informed by all of our stakeholders, that we don't make abrupt changes, that we make changes based on information and data. Our parking policy over the long term, I think we do need to work towards structured parking options. One of the things, though, as a sort of one of the stepping stones along that way, one of the things that I've been suggesting and encouraging is that we collaborate much more directly with the state of Washington on our parking plan. The state itself, through general administration, manages an enormous number of parking spaces. If we could figure out a way for the city to actually take on a management role and do a parking plan that's comprehensive for the entire city, I think we would be better off in the long run. The state has needs during weekdays. The city has similar needs, but also could take advantage of facilities that are needed by state employees during weekdays. We could take advantage of those facilities during weekends and during festivals. So I'm hoping that we can work towards doing a better job of using the resources that we have, collaborating, and hopefully over time moving towards appropriately placed structured parking.
Dick?
Okay, well, I was trying to think of what I could say that would be a little bit different. I largely agree with a lot of what Karen and Steve said. Do I like the new meters, or whatever they're called? No, I don't. If I have a choice, I'll go to one of the old-fashioned ones and park there. I really like the free parking the best. And Karen brought up a subject that I'd like to see whether or not it's still in effect. But a long time ago, if you were a little bit late and if you just missed and got a ticket, you could hurry up and go to one of those little pay stations. They had them up around town. They're still there, and pay the exact, I think it was, you didn't pay any fine at all, I don't believe. You just paid what you owed. And so I don't know if that's still in effect or not, but I think there should be some leeway so that you don't get stuck with a big fine because you were 5 minutes late. I believe that parking downtown has to be convenient, easy, and yes, maybe free. The reason that you shop at the mall or or a so-called big box store, partly is because the parking is easy. You go in and you park and you don't worry about it. And you go in and do your shopping and come out when you're done, and you don't have to worry about a ticket being on your car. And I think we need to come up with some sort of situation like that for downtown Olympia. I think it can be done.
How about the question on the structured parking?
Oh, the structured parking garage?
Municipal parking.
Municipal parking garage. Ever since I was a little kid, they've been talking about parking garages. There was one even proposed for hollowing out underneath Sylvester Park and putting a garage there. I think a parking garage downtown would be a good idea if you can do it, and maybe start it out with free parking.
Okay, that completes our first round of questioning. I would ask that, and we have 2 more rounds to try and get through, so please try and truncate your answers just a little bit so we can get through as many questions from our readers as possible. And let's switch then to subsidized housing and market rate housing downtowns. Market rate housing, as you know, has been a goal of the cities for years and years, decades. What concrete steps would you take as mayor to create more market rate housing in downtown Olympia? And Stephen, we start with you.
Thanks. So as I think I've represented well, I mean, this is part of my professional background has been helping communities create housing in their downtowns. And I often point to things that we've done in Wenatchee and Tacoma and Vancouver. We need housing available at all income levels. It's not just a matter of making it market rate. We need to make sure that we are accommodating people of all categories and needs. Olympia, in terms of the first steps that we need to take towards moving towards increased multifamily housing downtown, some of the things that I've started in terms of focusing on amenities, making the downtown more beautiful, creating a community renewal area, making better use of our community development block grant dollars. Those are all things that help and work towards both increased affordable housing and increased market rate housing. Particularly with the community renewal area, that gives us an extra tool to work with the private sector in creating public-private partnerships for housing that's available at all income levels. Again, making sure that our downtown is beautiful and interesting. The work done with Percival Landing Phase 1, those kinds of amenities are going to attract private capital and help us with producing housing that is really truly available to all income levels.
Thanks. Dick?
I think there's a fair amount of low-income housing downtown right now, and the question, as I see it, is how do you get people of middle and upper income, how do you get that kind of housing downtown? I think maybe sometimes we try to put the cart before the horse. Maybe when you make downtown so attractive that people will want to live there, then the housing will just automatically come. If downtown is such a great place, and we hear about how Percival Landing looks or is going to look very soon, people will want to live there, not just visit it, and then the housing will come just automatically. I think we're maybe doing this backwards.
I agree with what Dick said, so the question is how to get there. I think first things first, let's make sure that we're promoting downtown business. Let's make sure that we're not driving them out of business. One of the things that I did last year is I actually voted against the parking and business improvement area because I heard from so many business owners. I actually took the time to do a survey. I wrote it myself, my volunteers and I called. We interviewed 60 downtown business owners, and by far they were saying, we can't afford this. We're barely hanging on by a string, and this money isn't doing us any good. They're using it to spend $1,500 to pay for people to paint park benches, $1,500 each. We can't afford that. If we're not going to spend our own money doing that, why should we be spending yours that way? So let's start listening to the downtown business owners and trusting that they know what it takes to keep them in business. That's first. And another thing is that community renewal area. I don't think this is the time for it. I did vote against that, in part because it's targeting blight, but the tool it gives, and that's perfect to target blight. But this is designed for the city to buy property and sometimes through eminent domain, take down the buildings, clean them up. And do you know how expensive that is? Just to give you an idea, it costs over $8 million to clean up the new City Hall site. That is completely beyond our budget right now. So for us to spend $100,000 to $200,000 on a study for people to tell us where the blight is, when we have no money whatsoever to implement this kind of plan where we're purchasing and cleaning up and then handing over to developers, and I don't think we're going to get our full money back. That's quite frankly a waste. This is a study that's going to be on the shelf for quite some time. Griswold's, we do have $2 million in the 108 federal grant program. This fellow, he wants to restore what's a burnt building. He wants to bring green industry, create an incubator where he'll have small businesses in the green industry as a startup. This is exactly what we want. And within his plan, he's also talking about having apartments. This is perfect. This would be restoring an entire block and setting the exact tone that we want in dealing with blight. There are a few other things I can go into, one of which is keeping downtown safe. If you keep it safe, people will want to live there. But until they perceive that, they're not going to want to move downtown.
Okay, good enough. Ruta, your question is for Dick this time.
Okay. We started talking about market rate housing in the last question, and this is a little bit more specific. As you know, there was already one plan in the works for market rate housing and mixed-use development for the isthmus between Capitol Lake and Budd Inlet. And it drew sharp criticism from some people and praise from other people. And that development proposal has not materialized, obviously. So what's your vision for that isthmus property?
Well, I thought the Olympians' diagram that they had of the isthmus development was really pretty. I think the voters have pretty much expressed their desire not to turn that into a developed area. And I've met with a number of folks who've suggested a park in that area would be good. And I can get behind that idea. I think a park there would be very nice. I think, of course, the problem there is how do you pay for another park? But the folks I talked to seem to be well on the way to raising the money for it and attracting the money for it. And I think someday the isthmus area is going to be a very nice park, and I could support that.
Thank you for your pointed and direct answer, Dick. Karen, your turn.
Well, again, it's not my vision, it's the community's vision. And some of the ideas I've heard that I think are doable, given enough resources. There is the park that Dick just mentioned. I've heard people suggest a new library location there. Low height development, I think people are okay with retail there, so long as it's not blocking the views. And one person even recommended a coffee bar. So those are the kickers. Don't block the views. I think the community spoke very loudly on that. Make sure we're not causing traffic problems. That is a very congested area. That's a pinch point for a lot of people driving to and from the west side. And let's make sure that we're being environmentally aware. This could be a flooding area. We've got to be aware of that. So whatever we do, let's make sure that it's properly developed so that should something happen, we're not going to be flipping a really big bill and replacing buildings that could go there potentially.
Good. Stephen?
Communities that carefully develop their waterfronts, their valuable assets in terms of and again, I'm going to go back to the specialness of the city of Olympia's setting. Our natural beauty is one of our greatest assets. That's the way to attract private capital to the city. We will, I think, be developing more multifamily downtown housing if we do a careful and appropriate job of developing our waterfront. And we can do this with, in partnership with the private sector without incurring debt, without developing studies that sit on the shelf. What I think that we, in my own experience in terms of bringing people together and making projects really happen, you have to focus on community visioning, building strong agreement for what people want, and then making things happen. In order to make things happen, you need to create those public-private partnerships. They don't have to cost a lot of money. They don't have to take the city into debt. Just as Vancouver has done, just as Tacoma has done, just as Wenatchee has done, Olympia can take advantage of the development tools like the Community Renewal Act and come out with a vibrant and beautiful downtown.
George, your question goes to Karen.
Okay. In today's economy, joblessness and homelessness is a reality in our community, as it is in many others. And so perhaps as a result, we've seen an increase in panhandling in some areas of our city, particularly downtown. So as mayor, what would you do to help those truly in need while maintaining a pleasant environment downtown?
I think it goes beyond just joblessness and homelessness. The underlying cause for all of this is ultimately poverty. And poverty can take many forms, not just through jobs, not just through homelessness, but it can also result in kids dropping out of school. It could result from drug abuse, domestic violence, but all of these are contributing to that underlying cause of poverty. We met with the senior center. I had a special tour through there, and I was so impressed by all of the services that they offer. And what amazes me about nonprofits, it's so much that they do. The most difficult, emotionally wrenching work I can see. I would never want to do it. I don't think I could do it for more than a day without crying, going home and crying. But they do it on a shoestring. That is absolutely amazing to me. And I'm thinking if we're going to support anyone, it has to be our nonprofits who can do things that we can't do for so much less and produce so much more. We have what's called, the CDBG money, Community Development and Block Grant Program. One of the reasons why I like to spread that money out rather than concentrate it into just a few hands is because you can take that money and leverage. For anyone who's done a grant application, you understand that there are a whole bunch of boxes you have to check and it produces a score. And the higher your score, the more likely you are to get grant money from others. We're one of those check boxes. Have you gotten money from local government? I don't want to drop any nonprofit since they are all doing so much. Now more than ever, we must support them. As for the seniors, one of the things that I heard, and it's a city employee, her name is Anna Schleck, she's got a heart of gold. She actually takes in homeless people into her home. And she realizes people are down on their luck. I've seen that as well. But providing that safe environment is absolutely crucial. What we're going to do as far as people living on the street, that's when they go beyond that, we are talking about, one suggestion was, in Japan when you go to the airports, they have those really small cubicles that you can actually rent and sleep in. That was one idea. I don't know how we could pull that off or where we could pull that off. But there are a lot of creative minds here. But first and foremost, it's hitting the economy. It's making sure we're stimulating. It's making sure we're not taxing people out of their homes in the first place, and that we're not taxing businesses out of business. We must address the poverty, and the city government should never be the cause for it.
Stephen?
Homelessness is unfortunately an increasing challenge. I'm concerned, particularly with state budget cuts, that we're going to see increases in homelessness. I was Governor Gregoire's first chair of our Interagency Council on Homelessness. I'm familiar with activities that have been going on statewide and nationwide in terms of best practices of addressing homelessness. One of the first things I did once becoming elected to the Olympia City Council was work towards a coordinated intake system for homelessness in downtown Olympia. Fortunately, that model, now implemented, is being used as a proposed approach to address homelessness regionally. Homelessness is not an issue that is confined to a single city's boundaries. It's really a regional issue. We need a regional approach, and in many ways, I think that the steps that we've taken in the city of Olympia will help us strengthen our regional response by ensuring that we have social service providers working together on plans rather than working separately.
Good, Dick.
How to keep this in the framework of Mike Oakland's keep it short and to the point. Somebody dropped off some pictures at my house last night, pictures of that were taken around his building in downtown Olympia between 8:30 and 9 in the morning, and there were pictures. There was a picture of somebody sleeping on the sidewalk in front of his business. There was a picture of drug paraphernalia, and there were quite a few graphic photos that I don't have time to tell you about. Joblessness and homelessness in downtown Olympia, it seems like it's getting more and more complex. First of all, I have to say that you have to deal with the problem with a lot of compassion and love, but there's no simple answer. And I think that we ought to encourage the organizations that are working on this already. I'm on the Salvation Army Advisory Board. Salvation Army, BHR, Community Youth Services, Union Gospel Mission, and many other organizations that are downtown working on these problems in this situation. We must encourage them and give them more help so they can do the job that they're trained to do. Those are the experts in solving this problem. Let's support the Salvation Army, the Union Gospel Mission, BHR, and others. Give them all the support that we can.
Jerry, your question goes to Stephen.
Okay. This is a question about street maintenance, and some residents have complained that some city streets have been torn up for sewer projects and other types of projects, then poorly patched. And are you satisfied with the city's repaving program, and what priority would you place on street maintenance?
You know, it's one of those challenging, never-ending issues. Streets are primary responsibility of a city to make sure that they're well maintained and safe. I think that we have a decent street pavement management plan. It's suffered in recent years because of the economy and because of declining revenues. I'm very concerned that we're not able to keep up with streets as well as everyone might like. A particular challenge is whenever we're putting in a new water system or sewer system, you're going to have that inevitable challenge of construction season that seems to go on forever if you have to deal with it on a daily basis. I think that overall our city does a fairly decent job of staying on top of these issues. It's not to say that I haven't regularly heard specific concerns around the city. One of my priorities in terms of our budget is making sure that we structure our budget in a way that we're doing the best job possible of maintaining what we have before expanding into other project areas. So street maintenance has got to be a priority. I'm hoping that we can stay on a strict management plan that's based on best practices.
Dick?
While potholes, public safety, fire departments, I think should be sort of like a pyramid. When you spend the city's money, potholes should be a priority. And I know there are some not too far from my home on Crestline Boulevard that have been there for weeks and weeks and never seem to get filled. And pretty soon my entire car will drop inside and I'll disappear forever. Yeah, I think there maybe is a problem here. I was driving along Capitol Way not too long ago, thought I had a flat tire, but it was just that the road was rough. So maybe we need a little more work on the potholes.
And Karen?
Well, my grandmother always said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And just to maintain our roads, if only to resurface, that can save us so much money, because once you've got those cracks and they start to fill in with water, and then you've got your winter freezes, it's going to get to the substrate. And if you have to redo the substrate, watch out as far as your budget goes. So this absolutely has to be a priority. And I kind of agree with Dick. It's right up there with public safety. We have to put that with fire. We have to put that with police. These are the essential services that the city is going to provide. And if we drop the ball, no one's going to pick it up. So coordinating projects, that's another way we can do this, whether it's through laying down pipe, working with Puget Sound Energy when they go to underground wires, or fixing stormwater problems we have, or sometimes it could be converting septic systems. We have to coordinate, do a much better job of coordinating our projects so that we're not breaking up the street more than once. It's inconvenient for the residences, it's inconvenient for the businesses, it's wasteful. Another thing is that we are stepping up our efforts. I was happy to see Olympia is being repaved, and there are some other roads around Olympia. We're trying to create more priorities with that, and I think we are. But it is about prevention.
Great. Pam, your question goes to Dick this time first.
We've seen several incidents where protests have turned violent with resulting confrontations with police. As mayor, what would your instructions to the city manager and police chief be when it comes to dealing with protesters?
Wow. As I watch the protests on TV that are happening in London that seem to have no rhyme nor reason, it's really scary. And I think that if handled poorly, we could light the match and create such a situation here in Olympia. That's my fear. I would stay close touch with the city manager, the police chief, and make sure that whatever we did would be done with a lot of thought and care, so that something like what's happening in London right now and other parts of Britain doesn't happen here in Olympia.
Karen.
Well, I guess rule number one is we shouldn't be sparking off the protests in the first place. A few years ago when the city council, they passed a resolution for a nuclear-free zone. That just set the community off. That's not involving city government. Why are we addressing issues that go well beyond our scope? But that did exacerbate the situation for the port riots, and that's inexcusable. We have to know the bounds of our role. We have agreements with other cities for emergency services. This is something that we can expand upon. In case this happens, unfortunately, we have a lot of overtime usage for our own police force, and it's quite unfair to ask people to work 60, 80 hours in this kind of work. You're going to get tired. You're going to get in risk, not just for yourself, but for others. We need to beef up these agreements, especially with the military bases. And another thing, it comes down to training our staff, making sure that they're fully trained to handle situations like this. I think communities such as ours typically don't expect this sort of thing. And our police force, they have to be trained for so many things. They've got an incredibly difficult job, but this has to be one of them that we do train them for, because we are a capital city and we should expect these things every once in a while to happen. They're unfortunate, but we have to be prepared for them.
Stephen?
There's two non-negotiable principles, I think, at work within your question, Pam. Respect and security. We have to absolutely insist that that we're constantly vigilant in supporting both to happen. We need respectful engagement, and this is a community responsibility. We need community security. So things that happen that are crimes or criminal activity need to be dealt with as crimes. I am heartbroken at times to see how much or how easily we can, as a community, slide into conflict that goes unresolved over time. A couple of things that are very important to me that I hope to incorporate into the city's criminal justice system. I'm very much in favor of having a restorative justice system as a part of our criminal justice system, where we have a tool for people that are victims and perpetrators of crimes to actually meet together and conciliate and mediate over their differences. That kind of a diversion program, I think, can reduce pressure within a community, make us stronger as a community, and adds, I think, to those underlying principles that I believe are so important for a city to have, where we have both respectful engagement at all times and insist upon it, and we have community security at all times, where people feel safe and comfortable in their own communities.
That completes round 2. We did better on time that time, so we keep it up for round 3. Stephen, Karen, my question comes to you this time. We have many consolidated services here in South Sound. Medic 1, Central Police and Fire Dispatch, the Lot Alliance, Animal Services, Intercity Transit. Those are things that come to my mind at least. What public services in Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater are ripe for consolidation or merger, in your opinion?
Well, I've been meeting with Ron Lawson, and he's a big proponent of the fire district. It's strongly succeeded for Lacey, and one of the things that Ron pointed out was that not only do they have superb services, but their property owners are paying at least $1 less than if you owned a property here in Olympia, and I mean $1 for every $1,000 in value. This is something that we need to do a feasibility study on. Now, I'm not saying that we should automatically do this, but I think we need to ask the question, absolutely. Another concern that I have is with our jail. We have an extremely old jail, and I've taken a tour through it. It wasn't very nice. And we realize this. The city manager has put this forth before the council, but the council has repeatedly throughout the years not funded this jail, and it's getting to the point where it's now a safety hazard, not just for the people who go to the jail, but also the officers themselves. When they can't do their duty, there is an example. The lady Cynthia Brown, when she was tasered into stripping, well, one of the questions I asked was, why couldn't you use pepper spray or something of that nature? And the answer was because it will spread throughout the jail, it will contaminate. Unfortunately, they didn't have the space to do a proper strip search, let alone have women staff to do that, which they should have called in. If we're not willing to fund this service to the standard that the community deserves safely for both the members of our community as well as our own staff, then this is something we really need to consider regionalizing, going in with our partners. Another topic was parks. This is I've heard from both Tumwater, Lacey, and the county. This will be, I think, an extremely difficult one because Olympia has invested so strongly and has put such a high premium on our parks. I'm open to the discussion, but to me, this is much further down the road. We would have to ensure that our parks would be maintained to the level that we have been doing them for all of these years, and that the appreciation extends as much as our own.
Stephen, consolidation or merger of what public services?
Well, and this is a question that I think, again, should be driven by data and information and not by emotions or single incidents. I think that we should always be looking for efficiencies and effectiveness, ways to regionalized services is one way to deal with increasing economies of scale for municipalities. We have several examples of regional governance that I think is working well, like the Lot Clean Water Alliance, like, for example, the Home Consortium on Social Services. I think all these things can be improved upon. I am very much in favor of regional approaches, and I have worked particularly well with colleagues from other jurisdictions on the Thurston Regional Planning Council. Anything to do with consolidation of services, what I'm most interested in doing is that we don't go towards a lowest common denominator, that we go, we take an approach of consolidation where we're ensuring that what we're ending up with as a service is something better than we have at the current moment.
Dick?
Well, I liked what Steve said about data and information. I wouldn't want to make a suggestion on consolidating anything without having all the facts first. But if there was one thing that I think we should all be together on and maybe could consolidate, and maybe it mostly is already, and that's emergency preparedness. I think if there's a disaster, an earthquake, a major windstorm, there's one area that it affects everybody equally, or has the potential of affecting everyone equally, and that's where we need to get the emergency services people out there in force, all coordinated, all out there to help.
Good. Rudy, your question starts with Stephen.
All right. This is one of my favorite topics, but it's a tough thing because it's budget cuts instead of just budgets. So the projections are that the city could face a budget shortfall in 2012. And on top of already the budget cuts and staff reductions that have had to be taken. Hopefully you can keep this real short and just give me a list. What 3 areas in city government would be at the top of your list for further budget reductions?
Boy, tough question, Ruta. Again, I want to make sure that we address this question based on the facts, not numbers that are made up. So as we go through this campaign season, it's really important to stick to the facts. I don't know exactly what we're looking for in terms of cuts. I'm going to back into your question. I know that this isn't the way you want me to do it, but public health and safety have to be protected. We've already taken some dramatic cuts over the last couple of years in terms of general services. It's going to be hard to make those cuts. We need to maintain core city services. The areas of reductions around parks or general maintenance or further amenities, those are very tough things to cut away given what we've already done. What I want to make sure that we do is develop a budget, and I've been working on this diligently as chair of the city's finance committee, make our budget as transparent as possible, be as inclusive as possible, and starting community forums so that citizens are well informed of advance of our making cuts about what we're doing and what the trade-offs are going to be. And then moving into 2012, I want to further enhance that process where we make sure that we have a budget that's really truly informed by citizens' wants, needs, and desires.
Dick, do you have the 3 areas of government that would be
Well, I have to quote Steve from earlier saying data and information without having more data and information and studying the issue. I'm not going to say, well, there are certain things in the city that maybe I don't like, and I'd say you shouldn't spend any money on that anymore, but maybe somebody else likes it. So I'm going to sort of pass on that question without more information. I don't feel I want to say cut this, this, and this without knowing all the facts.
Karen?
Well, first, I think those projects that are unnecessary or that we can postpone, we should postpone. That's for starters. Another thing I'd like to point out is just shared sacrifice. I'm a state government employee. I took a 3% pay cut, and I'm also paying more for my benefits. And I'm happy to do it because it's saving jobs and it's also protecting services. Are we in this together or aren't we? Is this a shared sacrifice or isn't it? Am I going to get more, but someone else has to go home? I think that's unconscionable. I voted against 2 contracts. I was the only one to do so because those contracts, one of which gave pay increases, and not just wage increases, it also gave bonus increases. To me, how can you ask the taxpayers who are losing their jobs and getting their pay cut to support people who make much more money than them to begin with, to give them wage increases and bonus increases? There's a fellow who was getting 6% bonus annually for having a master's degree. Well, I have a master's degree and I don't get that as a state government employee, nor do I expect it. He wanted to have 8% and he got it. He got it this year. I was absolutely astounded because that's not a shared sacrifice. Another thing we had is an overtime. Yes, we do have emergency services and sometimes we do have to pay for that. There's no doubt, and it's fair. If you call someone home, if you call someone back when they're home, you should pay for that. And I'm okay with time and a half, but we had overtime abuse. And when it came to negotiating it, what the council agreed to was saying, well, stop abusing the overtime, and I'm not going to go into the details, but if you do, rather than paying you time and a half, we'll pay you double time instead. To me, again, unconscionable, irresponsible. I would never do that with my money. Why in the world would I ever do that with yours? As you know, I've also voted against buying art for the new City Hall. It's not that I don't like art. It's not that I don't own art myself from local artists. It's just now is not the time. We also have a 1% earmark, and I do call it an earmark. For those projects that are rather expensive, 1% of that will go toward arts, but we don't have any kind of earmark for homelessness, for domestic violence, for seniors, for Vietnam veterans, or for at-risk youth. We have to get our priorities straight. Another thing is to potentially sell city properties. The city does own quite a bit of property. Are we using it, or are we holding it hostage? If we're not using it, then let's put it back on the tax rolls. Let's sell this. We can increase revenue. We can send the right signal to downtown that we are open for business.
George, your question goes to Dick.
Okay, Dick, we've heard a lot of conversation about creating a sustainable community. What does that phrase mean to you? And as a mayor, what steps would you take to put Olympia on a path towards your vision of what sustainability is?
Oh, you like to use those big words. I would refer back to that Vision 2020 event that I went to. I think right now Olympia really has no vision. You can ask what your vision is, George, or mine, or Karen's, or Steve's, or Mike's, and we all have a different vision for Olympia. I don't think there is a concise, shall we say, crafted vision for Olympia that's based on what, to the best of our ability, the majority of the people in Olympia want. I don't think that vision exists, and we start with there and go from there and move on.
Karen, sustainability?
Well, there are two ways in which I would approach this. One is that, do we have the jobs to support generation after generation? It's always a shame when someone grows up in a community and then has to leave it because they can't find work. And that was a point that was really brought home to me 2 years ago when I was going door to door. There was a fellow who felt that he was getting shut out. He said, where are the labor class jobs? Where are the middle class jobs? Are we being driven out? So that's one thing. If we want a sustainable community, if we want a sustainable family, we need to take that into account. Another thing is physically and environmentally, is our community sustainable? As our population grows, can we sustain it? Are we going to have enough water? Fortunately, the city has gotten ahead of that with water rights. Do we have the infrastructure laid down? Are we going to supply the density, or are we going to sprawl? How do we work our codes, and how do we work our zoning? These are things that we can address. In some ways, I do agree with Dick that we need to do a far, far better job of visioning and articulating that vision of what we want to be. But it also starts with values. What is it we want? What is it our community wants? And we can work from there.
Stephen.
I'm noticing that I think that we've been listening to each other enough over all these forums that we're beginning to sound an awful lot alike. So I'm recognizing throughout this forum, things that I've championed myself, and sustainability certainly is one of them. I think there's a lot of resonance in terms of what we all want in terms of a sustainable community. Some of the elements that are very critical is making sure that we have a diverse revenue base. Some of my early work in this community, going back 30 years, was bringing the Olympia Farmers Market downtown. That represents to me a true sustainable relationship between small family farmers that are in rural parts of Southwest Washington that are benefiting from consumer interests and appetite, if you will, all puns intended, to create a good business relationship. We need to attend to our environment. What's good for the environment, I think, is good for business. Doing a shoreline master plan that really does justice to Olympia's shorefront is going to be good for business. I also want to say that Olympia is a community that thrives on the arts, whether it's theater, whether it's visual arts, whether it's music. That's good for business. And what's good for business is good for our revenue base. What's good for our revenue base gives us the ability to target social service needs. So it's a cycle. Sustainability is a cycle.
We have two more questions. Jerry, your question starts with Karen.
It's pretty straightforward. Contrast yourself with the other two people at the table. That table, not this one.
I've got more hair than they do.
Dick and I are both willing to concede.
Concede that. We have a concession here.
You know, I really like my opponents, and the nice thing is we all bring something unique to the table. One of the things I like so much about Dick is that he's got this experience in the community. He's been here for so long, and he's had this very demonstrated caring for it. One of the things I like about Stephen is that he brings government experience to the table. What I like about me is that I'm a listener, I'm a hard worker, and I also have the government experience from having worked at the legislature, from having been on the county planning commission, the city utility advisory committee, being very dedicated. And also there's my voting record. I'll admit it, I'm a little more fiscally conservative than my colleagues. For now, I think that's an excellent thing to be. There are times when we can spend more, and we should, but not right now. And it comes down to the voting record. It's not just saying this is how I'm different. You can view it for yourself exactly how I'm different.
Stephen?
Differences in terms of being a candidate. First, there's my experience. Community development has been both my profession, my vocation, and my passion for 30 years. Accomplishments. I think that they speak for themselves in terms of the past 18 months of what things that I've actually made happen, whether it be homelessness, bringing together funding for small businesses, or working directly with neighborhoods and solving code enforcement issues. The other thing is endorsements. I think my endorsements reflect the strong relational connections that I have with other cities and organizations throughout our region. So I think those are the three attributes that make me different from the other candidates.
And Dick?
Well, the big difference between Karen and Steve is that they're already on the council and I'm not. And as you watch this, I'm sure that there were a number of things that Karen said that you agreed with, a number of things that Steve said that you agree with, and hopefully a few things that I said that you agree with. So basically, if you vote for me, you get all three.
That's right. Karen and Stephen remain on the council. Our last question comes from Pam, and it goes to Stephen.
Stephen, how will you know at the end of your term whether you've been a successful mayor for Olympia?
Great question. So again, I measure my own success based on performance and accomplishments. That's how I've been doing it currently. So what I hope to be able to point to at the end of my term of mayor is very specific accomplishments, just like I can right now in terms of what I've accomplished these last 18 months. It's not only a matter of listening, but it's actually moving people towards action. It's not just having vision, but it's bringing people together to make that vision happen. So as long as I can continue on this same path, I'll be very satisfied.
And Dick?
If at the end of my 4-year term as mayor, at least some of my vision happens, I'll be happy. I would like to see Olympia, downtown Olympia, and Olympia is more than just downtown, I should remind you. There's a lot of other area, but let's say towards the end of my 4-year term, Olympia has become or is becoming a place where people get in their cars, get on the bus, ride their bicycles or walk. It's a place where they want to go, not just drive through. It's a place where you want to go for your shopping, for your entertainment, for your dining, and just to be there. And it's a place where people feel perfectly safe to be at any hour of the day. Then I will feel like I've been a good mayor.
And Karen?
Well, what I'd like to see is a comprehensive plan update completed, and I'd like it to truly reflect a vision and one that is sustainable. I want to see our shoreline management program updated and completed and have that be in congruence with the comprehensive plan. Sustainability, that's another thing. Do we have an emergency plan? Is it completely flushed out? Have we integrated well with our partners? This is something that we can continue to develop, and I'd like to see us continue for the next 4 years. Do people feel safe? And maybe that's the kind of thing that we have to gauge through maybe a survey or a poll, but that is absolutely critical. Do people feel that their quality of life has increased? And it could be things like the traffic problems aren't as bad. Our children feel safer. Our streets are repaired. Do we bring more small businesses into downtown, and do we further acknowledge the West Side, which truly is right now the sales tax powerhouse? How are we doing with those traffic problems there? I don't think that's going to happen in the 4 years. I think that's going to be maybe 10 to 15, but I'd like to make progress toward that. Do we have our spending under control? Right now, I don't really believe that we do. I'd like to set up a process where every single year the people of our community can review the spending from the previous year, have detailed information so they know exactly how it's being spent, and we're giving them far more opportunity up front to weigh in on how to spend for the next year. Open government. This is something I'm a huge proponent of. We need to make our public records more available. And not only that, in a user-friendly fashion, and this can take many forms, one of which is by putting more materials online, by scanning permits, having that available, as well as just sending out, it could be emails. We could have blogs. There are a whole bunch of different ways that we could do this. Do people feel heard? That's something I want to make sure they always do. And as a mayor, do the council members feel respected? And do they feel that I've listened to them, that I've honored them, that I've given their opportunity, that I never forced anything through, but I gave them the opportunity to work through issues, that I controlled a pace? That's extremely important when you're mayor, because you do set the agenda. Did everyone get a fair shake? And do they felt that I was able to help collaborate and make the council better just by calling them up, just by listening? If there's a 6-1 vote, calling that person who made the one vote and saying, are you okay? It was a rough night. How are you feeling? And making sure people on the council know that it's okay to disagree, but you have to do so professionally and courteously. And we have to maintain these ties if we're to maintain working relationships. And if I were to do one thing to help the fabric of the council, it's that. And I hope to do that.
Good. That finishes our 3 rounds of questions from the Olympians editorial board. I want to thank each of you for attending today and being responsive to our questions, and for giving the voters a real insight into you and your positions on these important issues. And to the voters, I would remind you that you should vote next Tuesday, the 16th. We again thank you very much for participating in the Olympian Editorial Board's Mayoral Forum. Thank you.